Good afternoon. Welcome. It's Cal Gould here doing another interview with some ball hockey players from the past. We have here with us a guest that will let us know what he has about ball hockey. So, who am I speaking with today?
Speaking with Russ Ruhr, and don't say the past, Cal, because you never know. There's always a comeback around the corner. So, just always leave those doors open.
Players of the past, present, and future. Let's try that instead. Where are you from, Russ? Where are you from?
Originally from Regina. Spent my first 21 years there, and grew up on the streets and playgrounds playing ball hockey, like most of us back then. And basically moved on to Alberta for the next 25 years. Calgary and Edmonton, Canmore, Banff, played ball hockey in all of them. And then since 2004, I've been in BC, kind of half and half, Victoria and Vancouver. Played a little ball hockey out here as well.
So you said Regina. So this must be one of the locations where you have your earliest memories of playing unorganized ball hockey or street hockey. Can you tell me a little bit about the first time you really started playing the sport, unorganized, that is?
Well, unorganized was on the playgrounds during recesses or after school in the evenings. That was happening all the time. I had a good group of friends. We all loved playing the game. Got out there well into the night, often all day during Saturdays and Sundays. So it was a good group of guys that we all played different sports. And then in the early 70s, I heard about Winnipeg, who my earliest memory of an organized league was in Winnipeg, where they had quite a large league, and they played outdoors in the wintertime and at the community rinks. And so we took it upon ourselves, I'm going to say around 1973, 74, I believe we played 2 winters outdoors in the community rinks. And there was just 4 teams. It wasn't even a Regina thing. It was more of a neighborhood thing. And we were able to get 4 decent teams in there and compete against each other. And it was good. It was really good.
So with that being said, can I ask, were you involved in any other organized sports before you played organized ball hockey? Was there any organized sports that you did play in any level?
Oh, yeah. Grew up playing baseball, a little bit of ice hockey. Those were the 2 main ones. Yeah. I think I even played a little bit of volleyball and soccer, and back in the early days, just in the school system. So yeah, the guys I grew up with, we all kind of did that, just played in different sports. I thought we had some really good baseball players in my neighborhood too, and even the city of Regina that maybe didn't get recognized enough back in those days that potentially could have been scouted. There was a lot of good, solid players, but the U.S. didn't really look at us back then.
Go back to where you said you played in Regina there, and you guys formed a league. Was it an actual organized league where you had referees and timekeepers, etc.?
Well, it was organized by us, and I say so. You'd have 1 game on the Sunday afternoon, and 4 teams, and the teams that weren't playing would do the reffing. 1 from each team would come out and do the reffing. And that was it. And we had a scorekeeper there, and but stats were not kept or anything like that. It was just wins and losses, and then playoffs at the end. And that was it. It was, competitive, but I would say when I look back at those early days of ball hockey, I don't know, as I got older, I got more competitive and more learned how to play the game more, and just learn that you got to run all the time, and there's no giving the other team or the other player in the other team an opportunity. So it was always try and force the player, and maybe in those younger days that wasn't part of it. And remember, we were playing on an outdoor community rink on ice, so you're running around on ice, which limits yourself as well to really going full out.
So now let's move forward a few years to when you joined an actual league. Like you said, you moved to Edmonton, if I'm not mistaken, and then you joined a league there. And so how did you join the league at that point? Did you join with friends, or did you answer an ad in the newspaper? Did you get invited?
Well, Edmonton wasn't my first organized league. It was actually Canmore. And I was living in Banff at the time. I'm going to say it was 1982, and working and living in Banff. And I heard about this ball hockey league in Canmore because I was playing ice hockey there, and word got out. Of course, I jumped on it, and we had a really kind of good, hard-working team. We ended up winning it. But what I remember about those guys in Canmore, they really worked hard, tried hard. Some of the players, like, maybe weren't the most talent, but I can say they worked extremely hard. And then the following year, very similar situation in Banff. So the league kind of moved over to Banff at that point. Same guys and that, but moved over to Banff. But I was on a different team, and it was a really good league. It was well run, well operated, and again, we ended up winning the championship. So the next year, I moved to Banff, or from Banff to Edmonton, and lo and behold, there's an ad in the Journal looking for ball hockey players. So I called one, and the guy says, "Okay, come out. We got to practice at so-and-so gymnasium at 7:00 Tuesday night or whatever. Come on out." So I go out there, and I says, "It's so-and-so here," and the guy wasn't around, but there was another team starting a practice there, and so I joined in with them, which turned out really one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was the Stingers with Steve Posovic, Martin Moy, and Bill Perdue. Yeah, those guys, and that was awesome. So that's how I kind of got into the ball hockey scene in Alberta. And of course, the Edmonton League was, just so much more organized than the Canmore and Banff. And of course, Edmonton you would play for cities and provincials as well at that stage. And there was even in 1985, there was a summer games up in Fort McMurray, where back then only one team was sent to the provincials. So the second place team, which this name, I don't even know how they got away with it back then, but the G-Spots, couldn't do it today, I'm sure, went to Fort McMurray, and myself and Martin and Steve Posovic went up there with them. And that was a good experience. I would say that tournament really opened my eyes up, actually, to competitive ball hockey. And that, because Fort Mac had a really good team. And so that took another step for me in my future ball hockey days.
When you joined the league, can I ask, like that particular team, the Stingers, can I ask you how old were you at that time, and were you with players that were of a similar age?
I remember Martin Moy was the oldest, for sure. I was probably next after that. That would have been in 85. So I would have been almost 28, 27, 28-ish. Yeah. So I was getting sort of on in years. I wasn't like 20 years old, maybe like a lot of guys were. So in a way, I think a little bit of a late bloomer there, but the team itself had a really good mix and a really, really, really good group of guys. I would say that team was probably the one or two closest teams as a group that I ever played with, for sure.
First team you played on then were the Stingers, and then do you recall any other teams that you played with shortly thereafter?
Well, in '86, I went out to Expo and did a little bit of work out there. So that left me out of the ball hockey loop in Alberta that year. And I joined up with a team called the Langley Grizzlies. I only played 3 games with them because it just the way things worked out that summer. Very short. And then really I'm jumping ahead to 1987, where I started playing a lot of ball hockey, winter ball hockey. In Calgary, I had moved to at that point. I played in a really good winter ball hockey league where there was a lot of players, future teammates of mine in Division One, and future. Well, there was a lot of guys who played on the Bullets, Calgary Bullets, who were a really successful team, especially when it got to the late '80s and early '90s. So those guys were all in this league. And again, I think it was the summer of '87 where I'd already played the winter of '86, '87 in the winter gym league. The Nationals were held in Calgary, so I went and watched that. And guys like Brent Scott were on the Bullets, and a few other guys that we played against in the winter league. So again, that really opened up my eyes to seeing the national level and how you had to compete in that. And it also told me, hey, you know what? I think I can do this. Maybe someday reach that level. So and then I just continued on. In '88, I played on the Jerdell Flames. There was a Jerdell Oilers team in Edmonton, and we got sponsorship. Jerdell Oilers and Jerdell Flames, and I played with them for 2 years. The '88 team, really great bunch of guys. Same as the Stingers. Those two teams to me were just, they just stand out to me as just fantastic group of guys. And I played in '88, '89 and Division One in there, and it was very successful. My teammates that I remember the most, there were so many of them we never had any stars. We were all just pretty darn good ball hockey players, pretty solid players, both offensively and defensively. We had decent goaltending, and we went to the provincials in '88, and we did okay there. Hey, we lost 5-4 to the Nordiques, and we lost 3-2 to Fort Mac, and so we never got to the round robin, or that was the round robin. We never got to the playoffs, but we had a really good competitive team, and my 2 best line mates ever was Al Hofford and Lindley Biblow. We just clicked. Can't say anything better than that. We all had our little good things about us, and it just clicked. And Al and Lindley both went on to win provincials with the Bullets a few years later. And I had moved back to Edmonton in 1990, so I wasn't part of that.
Let's look at, you mentioned that you were involved in other organized sports, but just looking at how other organized sports are their organizations, what's your impression of how the ball hockey organizations that you've been involved with? You already mentioned some of them before. Can you give me what your impressions were of some of these ball hockey organizations?
Well, I didn't see it from the inside that much, but I seen a little bit from the inside in Edmonton. And I can say that every league that I played in was well run, well organized, never had any issues. Referees were decent. Um, we had some longtime referees in Edmonton that were there for years too, so they knew the players well, and most of them were really good refs. I think some of them did some really good high end ice hockey, and so the organization was fantastic. Steve Posovic is the name that comes to my mind right away. He ran the Edmonton League for years, along with Jeff Romaine was involved, and different people. I believe, Cal, you were involved in that in some way at some point. And yeah, so zero issues with the organization of the league. Yeah.
Were you involved? Because you talked about referees. Were you involved in any other way, like as a referee, coach, manager, executive, any other level of organization with the league?
I did a little bit of reffing. I did it for the enjoyment of it, to be involved in ball hockey. And of course, I was in Division One, so you could never ref your division. So I was ref in Division Two or threes, which was fine. And I didn't do a lot of it. I just did a little bit of it, and it was good. And then as far as coaching goes, I coached a junior team one year. I'm going to say it was 1991, and they were 13, 14-year-olds, and they were great kids. I mean, they wanted to learn, and yeah, they were really good. They just came out. We were on a big losing streak right through until about game. I can't remember if there were 16 games in a year. We lost the first 12 in a row. And these kids still hung in there. I don't remember anybody quitting, anybody really saying anything. They just kept on coming out. And I tried to teach them a few things along the way. And we ended up winning our last 3 to 4 games, which of course that was kind of a highlight to that season. And but that's the only coaching I did. I did some player coaching, which is quite different. You gotta sort of handle things quite differently, and I enjoyed that. Yeah, player coaching was very, very. I enjoyed it very much.
What is the highest level of play you have done in ball hockey or any other sport? Like, first off, let's talk about the highest level of play that you went into, not just there's different tiers and divisions, etc. But when you talk about those levels that you played at, like what type of, you already mentioned you played nationals a couple of times. What was the highest you ever played there? And what was the highest you played in any other sport? Were there any other sports that you went a high level of play with?
I played nationals once, actually, in 99. I had the opportunity of playing about 2-3 years later, and work got in the way and I just couldn't make it out. And so that was my highest level. That was out in Toronto area, Brampton, I believe. And it was great. It was a great experience, and I loved every second of it. And I remember specifically that year because I had a really good year, and I can't remember the name of the team. They were basically the Playboys from the 90s, and they picked me up for provincials and nationals. And I remember walking into their dressing room. I'll never forget it, at the provincials. And I had been playing with some other teams who were good, really good guys, competitive, but there was just something special about walking into that dressing room that I hadn't felt probably since about 93 True Blues year, playing with the guys. and walking in, and Dan Rock was there, and McCarthy and Stinson and Sturger, and all these guys were in the room, and it was like I just felt, yeah, this is it. This is what I like. This is what I like to be. That's who I want to. Guys, you want to play with. You know the effort's there, the talent's there. There's no attitude. It's like go out and play. And so I really kind of missed that through some of the years since '93, where I was playing in Division II for a few years. And that was really good. I had really great teammates. But now you're going up in another level in Division I. It's just another level. And I really appreciated it.
Do you have a favorite memory or certain favorite memories of ball hockey, whether it's as a player or any other way? Just share with me one of your favorite memories.
Yeah, as a team or as an individual situation?
Let's start as an individual first. Let's look at it as an individual first. What was your favorite memories? And then let's talk about a team one later.
Well, the individual stuff, I mean, it's, you remember certain things that happened, maybe that you did in games or situations. I thought that '88 team in Calgary, all the guys were Division II guys, had never played Division I, but I knew they were good players because I played with them in the gym. And I said, I'll coach you guys. So I was a player coach in that team. And I can tell you that team had some really good players. As I mentioned, Keith Sheeler was there, who now has a trophy named after him in Calgary. And there was just so many good, that team never had a weak player on it. We were all just solid players. And, they took in everything I said. I did have some experience, being in Edmonton and then doing that Fort Mac summer games. All these things kind of helped me out to player coach these guys who had never been in Division I. And they were prepared. I think what I did most was mentally prepare them. Physically, they were good. So you have to mentally prepare them. And I tried to do that. I tried to say, look out for this. This is what could happen. Be ready for it. And things like that. Yeah. I think the individual stuff for me, I would say there's a couple other things that stick out. And that was, I went out and tried out for the Snipers in '96. And I had my worst game ever. I was responsible directly for 5 goals. And I'd go 2-3 years without being directly responsible for 1 goal, never mind 5, all in one game. And they never asked me to play again. I was on their roster the whole year. That I never got a phone call to come and play. And I guess I could have went and played somewhere else if I wanted to. But the point of that is jump ahead to 2001. I think it was 2001. The Sniper, I was back, playing Division I for a few years, and the Snipers asked me to come play with them in the Nationals. So I felt a little bit of a redemption there. The getting cut from them in '96 to being asked to play with them. And now I'm 5 years older. And the same thing happened with the Playboys. In '95, I got cut from their team. And in '99, they asked me to come out and play with them in the provincials and nationals. So I felt a satisfaction from that, and big satisfaction.
You're like a fine wine. You only get better with age. Is that correct?
Well, some of my best years was when I was older. I switched from defense or from forward to defense, I think in about 1995. And that's put me at around 30 or 36, 7 years old or something like that. So when I did that, I basically was getting older, and I said to myself, if I can compete with these guys, I don't have to be in as good a shape as them. I have to be in better shape than them. So I enjoyed running, so I started running marathons. I would do uh, mile intervals, half a mile intervals, 400-meter intervals. I would do run the hills, and I was in the best shape of my life for probably a good 4 or 5 years there. And I wouldn't surprise me if I was best shape in the league. Maybe who knows? I'm sure you got to make up at an older age for that little extra spark and quickness that you might have when you're 26 years old, right? So that's how I maintained staying in the game in Division 1 for those years.
So are you still involved in ball hockey? And if so, how long do you expect to be around doing that?
Well, I'm not involved in ball hockey except as a spectator. And I went out last summer. I played in the arena and I couldn't run. I had an Achilles issue. I put on weight. And one thing I knew from playing ball hockey is you can take talent, but I'll take a guy who's fit and determined over talent anytime. So if you can't maintain fitness, your determination slacks off as well because you can't do what you want to do. So even if you're determined, you can't run as fast, you can't do things as fast. So fitness was always a big key, and that's something that I don't have right now. So hey, miracles happen.
It's a possibility, right?
I turned 65 2 weeks ago. I never say never, but the reality is,
Yeah.
hey, sometimes the dream's better than the reality, and that's okay too.
That's right. So, hey, did you ever have any other family members that played the sport of ball hockey? Anyone that you had in the family?
My brother played ball hockey back in Regina on that Ford team. Him and his buddies, they were 2 years older, and he formed a team. That's the only ball hockey my brothers played. Yeah, was that year. And I played against them. Other than that, no.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone that wants to play ball hockey? What kind of advice would you give a person that just hasn't played it yet and maybe they're looking at playing the sport?
Well, it all depends on how serious you want to be about where do you want to go. Do you want to go out and just have fun and stay in the lower divisions? And I had a competitive nature to me. So even when I was in the lower divisions, we won championships and stuff. I always felt there was something missing. So I would say, find out who you are. Are you playing for fun? And that's okay to go in Division 2, 3, 4. I think they got like 8 divisions now, if I'm not mistaken. And just go find your niche of where you want to play. And the social part, the guys in the dressing room and all that, you have a few beers up sometimes after and all that. And just go do that. And maybe you'll find out whether or not you have the potential or the determination and the desire to move your way up to the higher divisions. You'll find that out for yourself.
Good advice. Is there a person, if they were here right now, that you would want to thank for getting you involved in ball hockey? Is there any particular person?
A lot of people along the way that I think every team I played on, I want to thank, really. I mean, even the teams maybe I would have wanted more out of, I still, am glad that that I did it. I mean, the early days, Steve Posovic and Martin Moy. Steve tells me Martin was going to cut me after the first practice. He told me that halfway through the year, and ended up going on the All-Star team for the Stingers that year and winning the MVP for the All-Star team. So, I mean, there was just guys all along the way. Like I say, whether it was Ian Polson asking me to play on the Rock. I remember one year in 2000, it was my last year in Edmonton. And I thought I was done in 03. And 04 came along, halfway through the year, I'm still in pretty good shape. And Doug McCarthy had this team. It was a bunch of guys who were older and just out to have fun. But I know those guys, they like to win, but they didn't carry a full bench. And I called Doug up or Malcolm, one of the two, and I says, you got a spot there for me. I see you're short on the bench out there. So they welcomed me to come out, and I played with them in '04. I really appreciated that. We didn't have enough guys, but it was one of those years where we played some young team in the playoffs and we beat them. And then we ran into the Rock and they kicked us pretty good. And that was Ian Polson's team. A friend in Victoria, when I went to play in Victoria, Paul King, he was back in the early 2000s on Joe the Bartender's team who went to the Nationals. And so I hooked up with those guys. They were all welcoming, people, open arms, come out and play, let's see what you can do. And that worked out really good as well. And and then there was one team in particular, the True Blues, who that was a really unique team because it had all these guys who never really played with each other before. There was maybe 3 or 4 of them came from this team, and 3 or 4. Bill Perdue and I came over, and Schultz and Starozchuk and Bob Skrill. He was an interesting guy, really good ball hockey player too, Bob. And we had a really solid team that year, great goaltending. And but what I remember about that year is that this guy by the name of Cal Gould brought all these guys together. Dan Rock, Greg, his line mate. I think Dan Rock scored 40 goals that year. And that team was it was really fun and unique to play with them, and brought about by Cal. Guys, there's a couple of guys I never heard of before. Ian Gordy, right? And I didn't know much about him. From what I remember about Ian, he showed up sometimes, not all the time. There was a guy, Tyler, on there, and Stu. They were pretty solid players, and they tried hard. And I might be wrong about those guys on that particular team, but we won the cities that year, and that was something that we deserved to win the cities. We had a good season, and we had a really good playoff that year. We beat the if they were called the West Stars still, we beat them.
Express.
They were the Express. They changed names. Okay, yeah, and that was great. And Starozchuk came over to our team from them along with Schultz, so I'm sure there was great satisfaction from those guys.
Yeah, all-star material that guy was, for sure. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you a question here that is a bit about the future. What do you see or hope to see for the future of ball hockey?
Well, I think these leagues are going to keep on going on. There's no end in sight. The leagues are strong. There's many teams, many divisions. Juniors is well established for years now, that those guys just keep on moving up. And even to this day, at least once a year, I go out and watch usually the Vancouver Falcons here in town in Vancouver. I usually pick a game where they're playing a good team, and then I try and catch a playoff game. And if the provincials are in Vancouver, I will catch the provincials as well. So I go out regularly to I've never stopped enjoying the game. I go out and I still love it. And now there's a whole bunch of new guys on there that I've now seen come when they're 20 years old, and now they're like 28, 30 years old, and they're the stars in the league in Vancouver. and a couple of guys were playing on the national team. And so I've seen those guys developed, and you kind of get to know them watching them play. And that's but this ball hockey, I see no end in sight as far as the league's continuing to play. It should just keep going.
So are you familiar with the International Street Ball Hockey Federation, which hosts world championships, and they've been doing so since 1996?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've never seen an international game. I've watched it on YouTube. Ian Polson and Doug McCarthy won, I believe, is in 2001. And I believe one of their teammates at the time was Alex Burrows. So we all know that name, Alex Burrows. I mean, that's going strong. You got world championships, and I don't see that. I mean, I'm not involved. I don't know what's going on there, but I believe they do it every 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. And they got the Masters that's been going on. I guess one of the things is that I was so old, Cal, that the Masters weren't around yet for me, right? And so one of the claim to fames, I like to joke with Bill Perdue. I said, you know what, Bill? I was the first oldest guy to continue to play in Division One. And he would point out, yeah, but there were so and so in Division. I said that, but that was Division Two, and that was lower division. I said I was the first guy to play into my 40s successfully in Division One. And then there's been so many after. I believe Doug McCarthy played when he was 50. And I heard he was extremely competitive, and really, Doug is just one of those guys who I played on his team for that 1 year in the provincial. He's just a really good teammate. He's just a presence about him. And Doug was great.
If I'm not mistaken, they weren't going to call it the Masters. They were going to call it the Russ Ruhr's. Russ Ruhr division of old players.
You know, speaking of that, I thought the Edmonton Ball Hockey League did a really good thing a couple of years back. The last time the Nationals were in Edmonton, they named the divisions the Malcolm Stinson and the Doug McCarthy division.
Yeah,
I thought that was a great idea. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for your time, Russ. You've given me a lot of insight, and certainly our viewers here will understand a lot more about how ball hockey has been such an important factor in your life, obviously, over the years, and doing it in so many places. I mean, most of the people I've already spoken to have only been playing in one or two cities. You have spread through quite a few areas, from Regina to Banff and Canmore and Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. That's quite a ways. So I congratulate you on your wonderful career of playing ball hockey, and all the wonderful involvement you've had, and hopefully a lot of friends that you've made, and hopefully continue to keep some of those friendships, because I think the one thing that we all get out of being playing an organized sport is that you make lifelong friends. Even if you only play with them for a short while, you can pretty well attest to it, that you make friends and you stay friends.
Yeah. Now, don't forget Victoria. I played there also, but you know, I talked about with you before, and I thought, you know, I'm going to bring it up. What's the biggest disappointment? You know, I think most players can look back, and there was one moment where they would have liked to have had happen differently. And now, without question, this one sticks out in my mind. It was the 89 team, the Jerdal Flames, we called ourselves. And we were a really good team. We had excellent players. We had a coach on the team that year. And we were, you know, second place. The Bullets ended up in first. So we ended up playing, I believe their team name was called the Top Guns, if I'm not mistaken. And you know what? The good old Top Guns beat us by a goal in the best of 5. They beat us 3-2 in the best of 5. by far, that was the biggest disappointment in any loss I've ever had, because I just thought we could have done a lot of damage in the provincials, and just had a really good bunch of guys, really good team. So that would be my one disappointment. I think it's always, good sometimes to remember those so they don't happen again.
I agree with you on that one for certain. I've certainly had my fair share of those disappointments, and like you say, I guess the better way to put it is things that you would want to have happened differently. You just say, well, if this were different, this would have happened, that sort of thing. We know we can't change the past, but when I look forward here to a future for ball hockey, we just finished talking about the international championships. There has been some discussion, and I know I've heard this whispered numerous times in the past. It's been whispered and never ever outright said out loud in any kind of a public way, but there has been talk for a number of years about ball hockey becoming an Olympic sport. And that would be, I think, along the lines of being the ultimate for the sport to get to that level of interest. What do you have to say about that?
You want my opinion on that? Well, John Short addressed ball hockey years ago, back in the 80s or 90s. I don't know who used to call up there and say the scores. Was that Federici maybe used to do that? He used to call up and
it was Henry Federici and John Geiger and a few other guys. Yeah, there was a bunch. Oh no, it was Jamie Wilson and Smith. I forget his last name, Smith something, first name. But yeah, he was always calling in to John Short, and I called in like a number of times too, but that was a little while. But he was always calling in with the scores.
Yeah, and John knew who he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I remember what John Short said. And as much as I hate to disagree with him, I have to agree with him. Ball hockey is a great sport. I personally love to run. But John said, as much as it is a great game, it's not a big spectator game. And because you're running and the game's too slow for any kind of TV or anything like that. So, when you compare it to ice hockey, where that's just so much quicker, so much faster. Look what even women have done in ice hockey now. It's fantastic. I want to make a comment about women. The difference between men and women in ball hockey that I continually seen back in the day, women do the best line changes out of anybody. If only guys can watch them run off the floor when it's time to get off instead of half run off, right? And they're fantastic at that. They just, boom, get off the floor. They're gone. And so from that point of view, the Olympics, it would be a dream to watch it. I guess that's what the World Championships are, but it just doesn't fit the television thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to be wrong on that, but I think John Short nailed it pretty good.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that perspective of it. It always has been a slower, because we're so used to seeing the speed of hockey.
Yeah.
To watch ball hockey is a slower spectator sport. But if we were to take a look at countries such as India, Hong Kong, Bermuda, Greece, they haven't seen ice hockey. They've only seen like such sports as soccer. And to them, watching the sport of ball hockey, because it's running and it's in a smaller arena area, it's quite impactful to them because it's exciting without them having to understand about hockey and all that sort of thing. They learn it very quickly. So there's a lot of countries out there that don't even have ice hockey as their anywhere on their scope, but ball hockey has somehow sprung up as a very highly active activity in those countries. I mean, Bermuda, you know how small that is? That has less citizens than what our whole entire city is here that I live in. And they've got a number of teams, and they've hosted the Masters, and they send a team every year to the international championships, even though it's at a lower level. But it just gives you an idea that the sport has a different perspective in other countries as opposed to what we're used to. We're used to that ice hockey comparison. And I think the good part about ball hockey is if you can run, you can probably play the sport. To pick up the skill of stick handling and shooting a ball just comes with the territory. You know, like kicking a soccer ball, there's a certain way you have to kick it. You don't just kick it with your toe. So really, the sport is low cost and easy to learn, and and it goes across different genders, like the two genders and or more, and it goes across different ages. So what my argument would be for the sport is that it's more likely to be on other continents than a major sport like baseball. Baseball isn't in other continents, but so far ball hockey has already reached, nearly every continent except for South America.
Well, I can say this. To me, ball hockey is the best game to play. It's such the running. As I mentioned, I love to run. I love to play hockey. I liked ball hockey quite a bit more than ice hockey playing, quite a bit more. And it's just fantastic game to play, better than baseball, better than soccer. It's just a great game for an individual to get out there and run and get exercise and be competitive and be on a team. It's really great.
Well, once again, got to thank you for your time. I appreciate all the input you've given me, and we look forward to maybe talking to you again in the future. And one of the things I'm going to share with you is that we are putting together something that is for, basically just a history of ball hockey. And we're going to try to put together as many interviews as possible to stitch together how ball hockey was back in the past, that really what it blossomed in what it is today. So I thank you for your input there, Russ.
You bet. Thanks, Cal. Appreciate it.